right now?" His mother's voice cut through the silence like a blade. "You think we sent you to the city to marry some village stray?" I stood there barefoot, clutching my child's tiny hand, the scent of milk and soap still on his skin. My husband stared at the floor, silent. He didn't defend me, not once. "Hi everyone, my name is Mira, and I used to believe love could outgrow humiliation. But what do you do when love becomes the stage for your undoing?" That night, rain pounded the windows as if the sky itself was furious. His mother sat on the couch with her arms crossed, lips trembling with fake righteousness. "You've embarrassed this family enough," she spat. "Go back to your mud house." I looked at my husband, the man who once promised me safety. His jaw tightened, but he said nothing. Only one sentence left his lips, quiet, mechanical, rehearsed. "Please pack your things, Mira." It was strange how calm I felt in that moment. Like my body already knew the pain and my soul had moved somewhere beyond it. I packed our small world. 2 shirts, a baby blanket, and the photo of our wedding that once hung proudly in our apartment. When I reached the door, I turned once. My son's tiny fingers tightened around mine. "Say goodbye to your father," I whispered. He didn't look up. Maybe he was ashamed. Maybe he wasn't. Outside, the rain turned the streetlights into halos. I walked into the storm with my child wrapped in my shawl, my tears lost in the downpour. I didn't scream. I didn't curse. I simply left. But something inside me, something I never knew I had, woke up that night. Because love, when it dies in silence, always leaves behind a ghost that haunts the guilty. By morning I was gone. But by the next sunrise their world began to collapse. One account at a time, one property at a time. And when his phone finally rang, his voice trembled. "What have you done, Mira?" I smiled through the wind and answered softly, "Only what you taught me to do, survive." The call came before dawn. His voice shook. "Mira, the accounts, they're all frozen. Even the apartment deed, it's gone. What have you done?" I could hear his mother in the background, shrill and panicking. For a second I imagined her face, disbelief painted over arrogance. I said nothing at first. The silence made him tremble harder. Then quietly, "You remember the day you made me sign those transfer papers? The ones your mother said were for safety?" He inhaled sharply. "Mira, you didn't." "Oh, I did," I said. "I read every line before I signed. You made me the joint owner on every account. And when you threw me out, you forgot to revoke access." There was a pause. I could almost feel the weight of realization drop on his shoulders. He tried to sound composed. "You can't take what's mine." "I didn't," I whispered. "I took what was already ours." I hung up before he could reply. My hands trembled as I set the phone down beside the cradle of my sleeping child. His little chest rose and fell, peaceful, untouched by greed, lies, or pride. I stared out of the window. The city was waking, unaware of the storm quietly rewriting its streets. In one of those buildings, a man who once called me his village shame was learning that the girl he dismissed understood more than he ever imagined. It wasn't revenge. Not yet. It was correction, the quiet kind that moves like water under locked doors. Later that morning I opened my laptop and watched as balance after balance shifted under my name. My reflection glowed faintly on the screen, tired eyes, a faint smile. For years I was told to keep my head down. Now I kept it steady. Because power, when taken silently, is the kind they never see coming. By afternoon the whispers had already started. His mother called everyone, her sisters, her prayer group, even the bank manager she once flaunted at weddings. "That girl from the village. She's ruined us," she cried as if the humiliation itself were contagious. Meanwhile I was in a small rented room above a bakery, the air warm with sugar and butter. My son laughed for the first time in days, smearing cream across his cheeks. That sound alone was worth every sleepless night. Still, my mind replayed that night like a fever dream, her sneer, his silence, my suitcase hitting the doorstep. Each memory sharpened into resolve. When I opened my bag, I found the folded paper my husband once gave me on our anniversary. A gift of financial security. Back then I thought it was a token of love. Now I knew it was my shield. Every clause had been signed, every joint title perfectly legal. They underestimated me because I spoke softly, because I wore simple cotton, because I came from a village where women weren't supposed to read contracts. But I had read every word. By evening my husband texted again. "Please talk. Mom is sick." "You've made your point." I almost laughed. His point had been to erase me, and now he was begging for conversation. I typed slowly. This isn't punishment. It's reflection. Look into the mirror you built. Then I turned my phone off. Outside, the bakery lights dimmed as rain began again. My son fell asleep against my chest, his tiny fingers gripping the fabric of my sleeve. I whispered into his hair, "Someday you'll know that silence isn't weakness. It's strategy." And in that stillness I decided something I hadn't dared before. I wouldn't just leave their house behind. I would reclaim everything they'd tried to take from me, piece by piece. That night I sat by the window of the small room, listening to the rain tapping against the glass. The city lights flickered on the wet pavement like fragments of a life I had left behind. My phone buzzed again, his name flashing on the screen. I didn't answer. Minutes later, a message appeared. "Mom's crying nonstop. She says she'll die if you don't return what you stole." Stole. The word made me smile. Faint, bitter, quiet. I typed back slowly. "You can't steal what was already yours. Maybe tell her that." Then I locked the phone. Across town I knew he was pacing. His mother had built her entire pride around status, and now she was watching it collapse. Every account frozen, every property flagged for review, because she'd forced my signature on documents she thought I didn't understand. The law had simply done what justice couldn't. At dawn I took my son out to the small park behind the bakery. The air smelled like wet soil and the birds chirped in the puddles. He toddled ahead laughing, calling, "Mama, look." His laughter carried through the fog like light through water. For a moment the pain of what happened faded. I wasn't the village girl anymore. I was a mother rebuilding the world from ashes. Then a car pulled up near the park. Sleek, black tinted. My heart jumped. The door opened and my husband stepped out. His suit was wrinkled, his eyes hollow. "Mira," he said softly. "Please. Just talk to me." I picked up my son and turned slowly. "You already said everything that mattered when you stayed silent." He took one step closer, desperate. "I made a mistake. She pushed me. And I walked away," I said. "Now you live with what you chose." His voice cracked. "What do you want from me?" I met his eyes. "Nothing. That's the point." He didn't move. For a long moment we just stood there, two strangers bound by a history neither could rewrite. The wind rustled through the trees, carrying the scent of rain and regret. My son tugged at my sleeve, whispering, "Mama, who's that man?" I looked down at him and smiled gently. "Just someone who forgot what love means." My husband flinched like the words were bullets. "Mira, please," he said, stepping closer. "I'll fix everything. I'll talk to the lawyers, I'll make this right." But I could see it in his eyes. He wasn't apologizing because he understood. He was apologizing because he'd lost control. Because the woman he'd called powerless had turned out to be the one holding all the strings. "I don't want your lawyers," I said quietly. "I want peace. And peace doesn't come from your house or your accounts." He looked at our son, his eyes softening. "At least let me see him." "You had that chance," I replied. "You chose not to." Tears welled in his eyes, but I felt nothing. That scared me, not the absence of love but the calm that replaced it. Behind him, his car engine hummed impatiently as if urging him to leave. His mother's voice suddenly came from the phone in his hand, loud, bitter, venomous. "Tell her she'll regret this. No woman humiliates our family and walks away." I tilted my head. "Funny," I said, "that's exactly what I did." He turned off the call, lowering his eyes. "Mira, you've changed." "No," I said, shifting my son on my hip. "I just stopped shrinking." Then I walked past him, my footsteps echoing on the wet path, each one quieter and stronger than the last. Behind me I heard him whisper my name, not in anger this time but in fear. The kind that comes when you realize the person you underestimated has already rewritten the story. I didn't turn back. Because sometimes silence isn't forgiveness, it's finality. That night I received an envelope under my door. No sender's name, just my name written in his handwriting, trembling and uneven. I stared at it for minutes before opening it. Inside was a single letter. "Mira, I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. Everything I did was because I was weak, too weak to stand against my mother, too afraid to lose comfort. You were right. I never protected you and now I've lost everything trying to please everyone but you. Please don't destroy what's left of me. For our son's sake, stop this." Let's meet once more. I traced the ink with my fingertips. The words felt heavy, not from remorse but desperation. He still didn't understand that what broke wasn't just our marriage. It was trust. I folded the letter neatly and tucked it into the old baby box where I kept my son's first shoes, his birth bracelet, and the only photograph where the three of us smiled together. A ghost of a family that never survived the truth. Outside, thunder rolled again. It always did when my heart felt like this, wild and unsettled. The next morning I went to the legal aid office. The young attorney there looked surprised when I handed her the file. "You're transferring everything back?" she asked. "Yes," I said, "but not to him. To our son's name, held in trust until he's 18. She blinked. "That's generous." "No," I replied softly. "It's justice. His father destroyed our home out of pride. I'm just rebuilding it out of love." By the time I walked out, the rain had stopped. The air felt new, like a door had opened somewhere I couldn't see yet. I looked up at the gray sky, whispered to myself, "It's done." But deep down I knew the story wasn't over. Because some ghosts don't fade when forgiven. They linger, waiting for one last reckoning. And mine was still on his way. 2 days later I saw him again, not at my door this time but at the bakery downstairs. He stood there awkwardly holding a paper bag, pretending to browse pastries he didn't even like. I watched from the corner of the room as my son laughed with the baker, his small hands covered in flour. When he turned and spotted his father, the laughter faded. He didn't recognize him, not really. Children remember presents, not faces. My husband's eyes softened. "He's grown," he said quietly. "Yes," I replied, stepping beside him. "That happens when you're not around." He exhaled shakily. "Mira, I came to tell you something. Mother's gone." The words hung in the air like smoke. For a moment I felt nothing, then something colder than pity. "I'm sorry," I said because it was the human thing to say. He nodded slowly. "She never forgave herself. She thought you cursed us." "I didn't need to," I whispered. "Your actions did that for you." He looked at me, really looked this time, and for the first time I saw the man he might have been if fear hadn't ruled him. "Can we start over?" he asked softly. I shook my head. "You broke something that can't be rebuilt. But I hope you heal." His eyes glistened. "You've changed so much." I smiled faintly. "You used to say I was just a village girl. Turns out I was the one who learned to survive in the city." He tried to smile but his lips trembled. "Can I see him sometimes?" I looked at our son through the glass, his world now filled with laughter, light and sugar-dusted mornings. "When he asks for you," I said, "you'll be there. Until then, let him live without the echo of your mistakes." He nodded, defeated yet somehow lighter, as if hearing that gave him permission to finally face himself. When he left, I didn't watch him go. I just stood there breathing, feeling something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. But I knew there was one last thing left to do. The following week I visited the bank one final time. The same branch where his mother once laughed at my village manners, now greeted me with quiet respect. The manager handed me a thick folder. "Everything is finalized, Mrs. Sharma. The trust fund is under your son's name, and the apartment ownership has been legally transferred." I nodded. "Thank you." Walking out, I felt the cool morning air brush against my face. The city moved around me, unaware that, somewhere within its noise, a woman had just rewritten her story. I took my son to the park afterward. The same park where I'd once faced his father in the rain. He ran ahead, chasing pigeons, his laughter pure and boundless. I sat on the bench, watching, realizing how far I'd come, from being someone's shame to becoming my own strength. My phone buzzed. It was a text from him. "Thank you for doing what I couldn't," ending the cycle. He deserves better. For a long while I stared at the message. Then I typed back, "We both do," and hit send. When I looked up again, my son was waving at me, holding out a fallen feather he'd found, small, white, fragile, yet free. He placed it in my hand and said, "Mama, this means an angel was here." I smiled through the ache in my chest. "Maybe," I whispered, tucking it into my notebook. "Maybe one finally was." The sun broke through the clouds just then, scattering light across the park. It felt like forgiveness, quiet, unannounced, but real. I didn't win by taking anything from them. I won by reclaiming myself, by walking out of their story and writing my own. Sometimes revenge isn't thunder. It's sunrise. I closed my eyes, let the wind carry away the last of my bitterness and whispered to the universe, it's done.